When you have been tattooed by over 60 different tattoo artists and have competed all over the world in tattoo competitions where you won so many times that they ask you not to compete anymore and to become a judge, you have earned the name the Mayor of Tattooville. Chris Longo has lived a lifetime of tattoo stories, and today he sits down with us to talk about those stories. The Mayor of Tattooville, Chris Longo. Thank you for hanging out.
Hey, thank you so much.
Finally get to do this.
Absolutely. It's been a while, too long.
You're one of those guys that I used to see a lot in magazines, and we had a couple mutual friends, Pulsating Paula. I always admired your personality. You're just a chill, laid-back guy. Every time I wanted to set up with you, you were busy, I was busy, you had health problems, so we're here today. We're going to knock this out of the park.
Perfect.
Instagram, Mayor Tattooville.
Correct.
Okay, so if anybody wants to check out Mr. Longo.
And my Facebook is just Chris Longo.
Right on.
So
you started out as a collector,
yes,
not a tattoo artist.
Absolutely. I started collecting, I think I was 22, so I'm 67 now. I think it was like 1983, maybe 84 was when I started getting tattooed.
Who started tattooing you first?
Well, the first time I really started getting tattooed, this girl, Phyllis, I'm so bad with last names, but
that's all right.
Phyllis, she was the first one to tattoo me. And you know what, look, here's the thing. I didn't start getting tattooed till I was 22, mainly because, look, everybody, my friends were getting like a zigzag man or something, and it really meant nothing to me, you know what I mean? Until, one day I was in New York, and I met this gentleman that had this beautiful dragon on his back, okay? He pointed out to me that, look, tattoos can be anything that you want it to be. It doesn't have to be, a zigzag man. Whatever you can design and think of, that's what a tattoo can be. And that's what really got me started collecting. Greg Irons did this particular tattoo. My first tattoo actually, because I was a union pipe fitter, I had this little welder guy, you know what I mean, welding the crack in the bone. Phyllis did it originally, and then I had James Vaughn rework it many years later. And, that's what tattooing is all about. It's free expression. You could get really, sky's the limit, but of course there's limitations. You can't do shit that's so tight knit because, it's all about longevity.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's what really got me started, and then of course, I met Paula even before I started getting tattooed. So I met her when I was like 18 years of age. She was taking pictures for Biker Lifestyle on Easy Rider Tattoo magazine. It was a really interesting time. I started doing all the Tattoo Society meetings, back in the day. They were at the Pyramid Club for the longest time, and then they went to CBGB's where Mike Wilson was always at the door. I really just fell in love with the art, and I actually started tattooing people in 1993. Of course, I would watch, like getting tattooed by Jack Rudy, and I would ask him questions. Whoever I was getting tattooed by, I would ask questions, and then I started making my own needles. It was a unique time. My first actual real tattoo convention, I'm pretty sure it was 1986 in Schenectady, New York, the Am Jam, which started out at this Electricians Union Hall in the beginning for the first year. And then the second year it was still there, but it was so crowded, the fire marshal came in and made like half the people go outside in snow that was like 12 inches deep and freezing in the winter.
Right.
And then the third year they moved it to the Armory. And then of course I did the very first Richmond show with Crazy Ace, and Billy Easton. He had 2 shows, maybe 3 shows in a year. I mean, everything was just like so tight knit. You'd go, and once Sunday came along, it was like you were sad because you knew the show was ending and you had to go home on Monday. I'm just so grateful that I got to live through the really great years in tattooing where people cared about getting cohesive bodysuits. To me, that's what it was all about. I have work from well over 60 different tattoo artists. I was fortunate enough to have Guy Aitchison rework a lot of the stuff on my arms. To me, it's all about the passion of the art, really just about the love of the industry
Yeah.
and trying to give back and be a giver and not a taker.
Right.
That's why I've collected so much stuff. I mean, I'm selling all my old convention t-shirts. I mean, at one point I probably had at least 350 convention shirts and, shirts from other people,
Right.
Tattoo artists. Also at one point, because I always like to support the builders, I collected I stopped counting after about 230 tattoo machines. So now I've been selling off my tattoo collection. I had over 75 of John Clark's tattoo machine. Another real innovator in the tattoo building, still is an innovator. I sold Chad Rollison 68 of my John Clark machines. Because, Chad had the same passion as I did and loved John as an innovator when it came to tattoo machines.
Right.
So now he displays them all. They get to be together for history. I mean, look, I could have sold them separately, probably made more money, but I wanted to keep the history alive. Life is history.
Yeah.
I mean, we travel through the years. I mean, because in the end, we don't know nothing. And truthfully, our most valuable possessions are our memories
Right.
and our friends, and the camaraderie of it all.
You started working on your bodysuit pretty much from jump?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, here's the thing. I started off, I was only going to get 2 tattoos, okay? I got, me welding the crack in the bone, and then on my other side, I got, me, because I was a pipe fitter welder, where, it's the burning outfit, and he's burning, the skull guy was burning the 45 into the skull. Because at the time, I had like a 1940 flathead 45. I had, a Cervicar with a 45 motor in it, So I just like the idea that tattoos could be whatever you want it to be, whatever your mind can create. And, you relay it to the artist and they lay it down on you.
Right.
So to me, that was it. I got the one here, I got the one there, and then I got one here, then one here, one here. And I believe in being a collector. It's okay to have a beautiful collection from one artist, but to me, that's not a true collector.
Right.
To me, a collector is somebody like Yalzi, where now he's up to 112 or 115 different tattoo artists tattooed him, and he always said that I was a mentor to him.
Right.
You know what I mean? Now, he's an idol for me. You know what I mean? To see how far he's come with his collection.
Right.
So
yeah, I've had people say to me, "Oh, well, you're a collector," and I'm like, "No, not really," because when I think of collector, I think of somebody like you. And I don't have the amount of different artists like you do. My early memories of you were seeing you in tattoo magazines, what I
Right.
mean? Standing up there on stage with a bunch of other collectors, showing off this amazing artwork that took years to get.
Right. Well, for me, look, I was happy and I'm proud. And I wanted people to be able to see the work from the different tattoo artists. I competed for too long. In the end, because I would always go enter overall. Guys would see me entering and they're like, oh, well, I'm not going to enter. I seen that in my mind. I was like, you know what? It's time for me to stop entering. I was working for Mario Barth at the time at Starlight, tattooing. So the biggest tattoo show on earth that Mario put on, out of the gate, he goes, hey, you want to MC the show? And I was like, yeah, all right, So anyway, right before the show, Jesus, I smoked a joint and I was like, wow. And then I realized I had to get up in front of all these people and talk. I was a little nervous at first, but then it just came natural. And it was something that I really enjoyed. Okay, I emceed different tattoo conventions for 15 years. For the first 11 years, all I ever asked was, look, just get me there and give me a place to stay. I didn't ask for no money. After like the 11th or 12th year, my fee was $500 for the weekend. You get me there and you give me a room, but it was something that I really enjoyed. And then here's the thing. It became too much like work. I didn't want to do it. I just wanted to have fun. So after that, people would just have me come, they'd give me a place to stay, you know what I mean? And just to come and have me judge. So, and I enjoyed being a judge because, look, I always believed in being fair. I don't give a shit if you are my best friend in the world. I look at a tattoo for creativity. I look at a tattoo for, how it's placed, line work, color saturation, how, colors play off of other colors. That's why, people always wanted me to judge.
Right.
So
how did you make the transformation from collector to tattoo artist?
mainly because, look, I loved tattooing, period. I loved it. And, like I said, I'd get tattooed by like Jack Rudy or Brian Everett or, so many different artists, Corey Kruger. And while I was getting tattooed, I would ask questions, okay, like what needle groups are you using, and I would watch.
And they never pushed back on that?
No, they were happy to try to teach me, you know what I mean? And then, like I said, I started doing the right thing, making my own needles.
Yeah.
That was important, to be able to do things from the ground up. I'm all in favor of technology. Look, I still, basically am a coil guy. But with the pens, look, the ease of the cartridges. You got one machine. You can hit 6 or 7 cartridges, just click in. It's technology. It's easier. Technology is what's keeping me alive right now, This April 27th will be 3 years, without a heartbeat. I have constant flow. I got what's called an LVAD, left ventricular assisted device, to where, the batteries keep this pump flowing. It pushes through my left lobe and it pushes it out the right. This monitor tells me my pump speed and how many liters of blood per minute are, going through my circulatory system, which technology is like unbelievable anymore. With the use of AI, everything has changed. The tattoo industry has changed. Found out this weekend there's such a thing as ignorant tattoos.
Don't even get me started with that.
Look, here's the thing. I just don't understand that. People getting colored line work, I'm into it all for longevity. Tattoos have to breathe. You have to have a relationship of your line work, 25% shading, 25% coloring, 25% open skin so it breathes. I wish I knew all that shit before I started getting like really heavily tattooed. After my arms, like I said, I was getting tattooed by Bernie Luther from Vienna, Austria, and Tintin from France, Jack Rudy, Corey Kruger, John Clue. Just to name some of the artists, to me it was such an honor to be able to travel through that time and space.
Let me ask you one more question, because I don't think there's a lot of current tattoo artists that even know about this, but the Tattoo Association thing. How did that start? What happened to it?
Oh, well, look, here's the thing. It was the New York Tattoo Society, okay? Clayton, I think his last name was Powell. He started the Tattoo Society meetings. It was the first Monday of every month where we'd go into the city. We would have like contests, you know what I mean? And you would win different trophies. And it was just a good time. Of course, most people have no clue about the Tattoo Society. Was it the Pyramid? Definitely CBGB's. I can't remember the other place where it was, but it was in Coney Island. Can't remember the name of the venue, but it was just cool, you know what I mean? To see other people and to get to meet other tattoo artists. The first time I ever met Philip Liu was the third year of the Am Jam when they moved it to the Armory, and that's when I met Philip, and I met Bernie Luther, okay, in like 91, he did me smoking a hookah on my leg. We became friends. I mean, I had my whole entire stomach and my neck done in 1994. Well, that was a lot, you know what I mean? I don't ever recommend that because, I'm not talking about, stopping time. I'm talking about a solid ass, at least 35 to 38 hours of solid tattooing in 1 week's time. And look, I never knew what anxiety was, but I got sick from getting that much work at one time to where I was getting hot and cold chills for like 24 hours. My wife was saying, oh, look, you really need to go to the hospital. And I said, they're just going to tell me I'm an asshole, you know what I mean, and send me on my way. But I actually felt sick for like 4 or 5 days after that. Then I went back to work, and that's when I had my first panic attack because I don't ever recommend getting that much work, you know what I mean,
At one
in
time.
one time.
You said you worked for Mario Barth. When did you wind up opening up your own shop?
Once I retired from the union, because I was a union pipe fitter, I got my 35 credit years in. Like my wife was always saying, look, you really should open up your shop beforehand. But it was very important for me to get all my credited hours in and get my 35 credit a year. So now I collect a pension every month. You know what I mean? I get to live comfortable. That was important for me. I was still 54. I opened up Town Hall. I called it Town Hall because, look, I was emceeing all these shows and, everybody would always come to me if they had a problem and I would try to handle it for them. And, Guy Aitchison's wife, Michelle, started calling me the mayor of Tattooville. And that's how that stuck. So, my wife said, look, we're going to open up a shop and every mayor needs a town hall. So, I was the first one to where, it's townhalltattoo.com. And then, like a year later, there's another Town Hall Tattoo in Auckland, New Zealand. But of course, I got the .com. And I had it for 11 solid years. But then, my health gave out and I didn't need no more stress. And to be honest with you, look, it was 2 years this past November. I'm glad to be done with it, you know what I mean? Because look, the stress, it's not the same anymore. Look, people years ago really cared about trying to get a beautiful collection together. And I just got sickened to the point where people would come in, show me their phone and say, I want to get this. And I was like, well, didn't you look at any portfolios? To see what kind of work we do. And they're like, it doesn't matter. I want to get this. That always disappointed me to no end because it's so important for people. If you're going to go buy a car, what are you going to do? You're just going to go, oh, that car looks nice. Just give me that. You don't do any kind of research. You need to do your research. Educate yourself.
Yeah.
I've always been a firm believer that education is the key to everything. So that's why it's so important to look at portfolios, take your time, and do what's right.
Things have changed a lot,
Incredibly. And look, I'm not bitter over things changing. Everything changes. Technology changes. The reality is everything is so oversaturated. You got somebody, that apprentices for 1 year and then they get out of their apprenticeship and then they go and open up a tattoo shop and then they apprentice of other people. It hurt the tattoo industry in a whole. But, look, I'm not bitter about it. I'm happy that I was able to live through the times that I did. People have always pretty much liked me and respected me is because, look, I tell everybody, I am no better than a junkie that lives under a bridge. Because the reality is, look, they're a human being. Mm-hmm. They took a wrong turn, and I stayed on the correct path. Okay, so I never felt above anybody. I always have time to talk to people. I always have time to try to educate people to the best of my ability. And just be a good human being. At least 98% of all of us. We all want the same thing. We just want to be happy, to enjoy our life, to be able to get to hang and be with our friends and be inspired by going to different shows and looking at all the new different artists that come out. This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Period.
I think that's a good way to end it, man. Thank you for hanging out with me today.
Well, I appreciate you
Finally
having
getting
me.
to do this.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, and
Everybody-
thank you for doing what you're doing for the tattoo industry, because look, the history is so important. I can't stress that enough, how important our history is. You know, you got to know where you came from.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Hey, man, I love it. That's why I do it. That's why
And I
put the time
appreciate
into
it.
Thank you.
That's why I'm really grateful to get the opportunity to get down and sit down and talk with you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
All right, hey, thank you, and God bless, brother.
Thanks, man.
All right.